All right, so thank you for tuning in to Chomping at the Bit. This is episode number 99. So yes, we were just one more episode away from 100. But, of course, before we get to that episode, got this one. Hope you're all doing well. If you listen to this in the morning or whatever time of day it is, hopefully you're having a good day. So for this episode, going to talk about the play-in tournament. Now, by the time you listen to this, we would have already had night one of the play-in tournament, basically the Eastern Conference side, where the Celtics beat Washington, so they are now the 7th seed. And then we had the Pacers beat the Hornets, so the Hornets season is done. And now we have Washington going against Indiana to see who's the 8th seed. And I guess I don't understand where, I guess, the confusion is, because there's some people, even like NBA analysts and stuff, who are acting like this play-in tournament is difficult to understand and to explain, even though I just did it for you pretty quickly there in about 10 seconds. And I gotta say that I do like the potential of the play-in tournament, mainly because it's not gonna completely do away with tanking, because of course you're gonna have teams who know that they don't have a shot at the play-in tournament will tank, but I think it, I guess, shrinks the possibilities of tanking. By that I mean the only teams who really were like awful this year were like Oklahoma City, guess Cleveland, Detroit. I guess you'd say Sacramento had a veil shot at making the play-in, but with the top 10 teams, so 1 through 6 or whatever, but now opening this tournament to the 7 through 10, that means you're gonna have teams 11 and 12 most years will probably be within striking distance the last week, maybe the last 2 weeks of the season. Therefore, you're not going to have, extended games of meaningless basketball with guys sitting out and, G League teams out there on the court. So because of that, I do like what the play-in tournament potentially will be. And we saw was it Tuesday night where Boston versus Washington had a, I guess, pseudo playoff atmosphere to it, where both teams, you could tell, were really going for it, because with Washington you had Bradley Beal, who's nursing a hamstring injury, so I'm sure they would have loved to get the win, and then that way Beal would have had like 3-4 days off before 7 seed playing the 2 seed, which is Brooklyn. But now that Washington lost, they're gonna have to turn around, and I guess it's gonna be Thursday or Friday. They're gonna have to go at it with Indiana, play another high pressure game, and hope Beal's hamstring holds up enough to where he can play and give them a shot at winning. So that matchup was a good one. Now the Celtics are locked in at 7, and we get Celtics Nets. I believe they announced game 1's going to be on Saturday. So we'll go into playoff matchups on a different episode. This is play-in tournament stuff. Now, like I said, Indiana, who going into the season, they were expected to be a playoff team, probably bottom part of the playoffs, 7-8. They had a tough season. They went through a coaching change and kind of had to do a little bit of locker room cleaning, where there were some reports that the locker room didn't like Nate McMillan, which is why they moved on from him. And, you had a couple injuries, TJ Warren, Miles Turner. Miles Turner played like 45 games, and he's been out with I want to say it's like a foot injury or something. But, him not being there was a blow to them. But they were able to pull through. They actually demolished the Hornets tonight. And now we get them against Washington, which is going to be an interesting matchup because I think Brogdon has a little bit of a hamstring injury as well. Although Brogdon doesn't, base his offensive game on athleticism. He's more of a, big guard who can post up little guards, mid-range shooter, spot up three-point shooter. So with all that, hamstring isn't that big of an issue. And I think it's going to be an interesting game because you're going to see like TJ McConnell, Aaron Holiday, guys like that try to slow down Westbrook. And then with Beal, you're going to see Brogdon. I'm guessing McDermott might be on him. And it's going to be interesting to see if Washington can bounce back after losing to Boston and get some production out of Bertans, because he struggled mightily against the Celtics. They got good contributions from Ish Smith. He gave them like 16, 17 points, which is more than enough that you're looking for from him. I think they'll probably look for Hachimura to step up a little more, but I will say I think Washington's going to be favorable in that matchup. But looking at the other side for Indiana, it's going to be hopefully they're going to get Sabonis going a little more. I know Sabonis had like 23 rebounds. I think he scored like 14 points, maybe a little more than that. But I was watching the game offensively. It was really frustrating for him. It seemed like every time he was making a move to the basket, he was getting called for an offensive foul or something like that. And, he could be a big part of their offense with no Turner and Warren. And, Karis LeVert is now in COVID protocol, so we don't know when. I guess he went into the protocol because I think he has to do 7 to 10 days. So I don't know if he's going to be available for the basically the 8th seed playing game against Washington. We'll have to see. But Indiana did kind of go at Charlotte with a pronged attack. They had Brogdon. McDermott had a good game. O'Shea Brissett, the young guy, he had a good game. And it's a bonus, like I said, he did a lot of, stuff, work on the boards. He led some fast breaks, which is a, added benefit to him because he plays like his dad, where he can pull down a rebound, get the break going. And he's a great passer, so they play a lot of their half-court offense through him on the high post and all that kind of stuff. So for Washington, he's going to be the key guy to stop Sabonis. And then for Indiana, they're going to want to, continue what Boston did and, limit Westbrook's impact, because Westbrook's a guy who can give you like 20 without really shooting the ball well. And then he's a more than willing rebounder. Probably the best rebounding guard that I've seen. because he could grab 15, 20 boards, no problem. And he still gives you the assists. Because, any given night, he can walk out with a triple-double and, lead Washington to a win. So, be interesting to see what happens there. Early outlook, like I said, I think Washington gets it, and then Washington becomes the 8th seed. But I would not be surprised if Indiana were to pull it off because they play like they did against Charlotte. They'll be fine. They had ball movement, player movement. They were active on defense, got some turnovers, got easy baskets. And that's going to be definitely, beneficial when going up against Washington and Indiana. Actually, both teams, you could look at it, kind of have to play the same way. So I'm expecting a more competitive game than the Charlotte Indiana game was. So, and I believe, like I said, I think that game's on Thursday. And it should be a good atmosphere. So that game will be in Washington. Yeah. But I guess looking at the team, Charlotte, who ultimately had their season end with the loss to Indiana, they had an interesting season. They're at one point they were the 4th seed in the East, and a lot of people were hyping them up. They were thinking that they were going to be, a team that could sneak in, steal a top 4 seed, get some playoff experience, as well as, possibly knock off a 5 seed in, I guess at that point it was like Atlanta or the Knicks. They wouldn't have probably been picked against like a Miami or Boston, but against Atlanta or New York, I'm sure some people would have picked them to win that series. But I guess the last month or so, they were really in a free fall. They went from 4, slipped all the way to 10th, and barely hang on to a play-in spot. I think ultimately the Bulls finished like 2 games behind them. But, with a team that has LaMelo Ball, who some people think is the Rookie of the Year. Now, to me, I think it's Anthony Edwards because he's played more this season, and LaMelo missed a good amount of time. But now some of these voters are where, LaMelo's a big name, at least, I guess, amongst the younger crowd. And, of course, most sports fans knew who he was before he came to the league. But, the hype that his dad brought in before him, as well as, the fact that Lonzo had hype to him. And all this time we've been hearing about LaMelo being better than Lonzo. That fed into it all. But, they had him. I had to make sure I had the right Bridges, but Miles Bridges, who on any given night was a SportsCenter highlight with his high-flying dunks and all that. PJ Washington, solid player out of Tennessee. So they definitely had talent. Yes, they were young, and maybe this experience of, being up at 4, falling all the way to 10, I guess teaches them something going into next year. And then that way, this year wouldn't be a complete loss. But it's a tough way for them to end the year. Now, coming into it, I actually thought that they would probably... How did I think it was going to go? I thought they were going to... Well, so I thought they were going to beat Indiana and then ultimately lose the Boston-Washington loser. But I thought it'd be a good thing for them. And now there's kind of some questions going into the offseason where Borrego's the coach, but there's been some reporting that some players might not be happy with him and all this kind of stuff. So we'll have to see what happens there. Do they move on from him, bring in a different coach? They're going to have to try to figure out the Hayward situation because Hayward got hurt this year, missed the play-in game. And, they signed him to that big deal in the offseason where, some people killed the Celtics for not, trying a better effort to re-sign him or to move him, I guess, in that Indiana deal where they were supposed to get like Miles Turner and Doug McDermott. But they're going to kind of have to figure out if for the next 3 years is Hayward going to continue on this injury prone trend, or will they be able to, do something, whether it's bring in more pieces on the team to maybe take some pressure off of him and help him to, maybe, I guess, change the way that he goes about the game. I don't know. Because it's weird when Hayward was in Utah. As far as I remember, he didn't really get hurt. And then now since he's left, it's been one injury after another. Some he couldn't help. We all know what the injury he got with the Celtics like 5 minutes into his first game. That's just a freak thing. But now it's like little nagging things. Like, let me see, what has he had? So he had that ankle injury. I think he's had, didn't he have like a wrist or a finger thing? It's been all over the place. So hopefully he can get better. And then next year they can go into it, maybe a regular off season, and really improve upon this past year. LaMelo will be a year, I guess, more mature in the NBA life. Like I said, hopefully Hayward's back. Maybe Bridges becomes more of a piece on offense. Because right now he's kind of limited to corner threes and putback dunks and that kind of stuff. Can he develop a part of his game where, if Hayward or Ball or Rozier are struggling, that they could give him the ball in the wing, let him create? That would be a good next step for him. Like I said, right now, dunk, free throw, corner three, basically all he's going to give you. But yeah, so that's happened with the East. And now Wednesday we get the West play-in, I guess the first day of the Western play-in tournament, where we will see the Lakers against the Warriors, which I think is going to be a great one because, Steph has done like a miracle job with that Golden State team where, going into the year, a lot of people thought they were going to be lottery bound, as it was just Steph with no Clay, as Clay got hurt again in the offseason. Draymond was hurt stretches this year, but just interesting side note, we had, I guess, LeBron come out the other day and say that Steph was an MVP candidate. And then he kind of, I guess, closed his little statement with, even though we know he won't get it, but whatever. And, that comment kind of, I guess, brought me to a point where, I've had these conversations with people before, but it's like, they wanted to treat this year as a year to like doubt Steph and, how great is he really if, the fact that KD's not there anymore, or the fact that Thompson, Clay isn't there anymore, and Draymond is limited. How good is Steph Curry really? And as we saw from this year, I mean, he's maybe one of the most dynamic offensive players that the league has seen, with his ability to, he can play make, he can create off the dribble, he can make tough shots, he has like limitless range, and with that range, you're just pulling defenders more towards him, and you fire the ball around quick enough, you get an open shot. But I mean, to me, I know Steph Curry's not going to win the MVP, but he definitely should be on people's ballots. I mean, some will look at it as, well, they're a 7, 8 seed. Maybe they don't even make the playoffs. So then how valuable could he really be? But, yeah, I mean, you just watch the game. If he wasn't there, which would be on top of Clay not being there, on top of, Draymond missing some time, I mean, they are probably fighting for the top pick in the draft. So, just want to say that real quick, even though I thought the comments were a little, I don't know if the word's like self-serving, but we've kind of heard comments like this in the past from LeBron and LeBron apologists and all that kind of stuff, where they try to like illegitimize Giannis winning back-to-back titles. I mean, not titles, back-to-back MVP. Well, MVP titles, you can call it that. And that crowd thought LeBron should have gotten one, maybe even both. There was the year Steph was a unanimous winner, which apparently set off a lot of people, because it seemed like from that moment you're starting to hear a lot of people look for flaws in Curry's game or whatever. So I mean, it's gonna be a good matchup. I mean, can Curry do it again against the Laker team that's gonna have it's gonna have some guys to throw at him, whether it's like a Kuzma or maybe put like Morris on him sometimes. I don't know. I mean, one thing, the Warriors do play with a lot of pace, and the Lakers will run a little bit, but ultimately they're going to want to go through Anthony Davis on the block, either let him work or let him pass out of possible double teams and hit the open man, and it's going to be up to those guys to hit open shots, or if they're not going to take that open perimeter shot, then the ability to make a quick decision, get to the hoop. Because going into it, the Warriors are going to be the underdog. We get it. Lakers are defending champs, so nobody's going to want to just knock them out yet. But especially for the fact that LeBron was one of those who spoke up against the play-in tournament, didn't like it, which, gotta say, I don't agree with LeBron in any way. I think the play-in tournament's great, and he said whoever created it needs to be fired. I think the person who created it should get a raise or something. Love it. But anyway, so I think the easy pick's going to be to go with the Lakers. But for some reason, the game's going to be in... It's going to be in LA. So that will probably help the Lakers in the end to win the game. But I would love to see Steph Curry have some crazy performance, maybe like what we saw with Tatum, drop like a 50, 55 on him, and then see kind of what the narrative is coming out of that. Do the Lakers double down on their displeasure for it and maybe use it to make excuses or whatever? Or do they just stay quiet and then move on in the process? So, first game, like I said, think the Lakers get it done and keep the 7th seed. That way, forcing the Warriors into a second game going up against either who are the 9-10 seeds? San Antonio and God, why can't I remember this? San Antonio. I feel like it's so obvious. Lakers, Warriors, Spurs. It's not the Pelicans. It's not the Mavericks. I can't believe the team is slipped my mind. Hold on a second. I gotta figure this out. Either way, just while I'm figuring that out, the Spurs go into it with, I guess, an interesting way of looking at it is because San Antonio went on that long stretch. It was like 20 years where they made the playoffs every year. Then, unfortunately, last year missed out. And now, going into this year, they have a second chance because normal years they'd be out of the playoffs again. They have a second chance at possibly getting into the playoffs. And we're going to see if Popovich can make it happen. Memphis, that's the team. Forgot about them. So you got Memphis, Spurs, and then loser of the Memphis Spurs games completely out. Winner of that game gets the loser of Lakers Warriors. There we go. So yeah, San Antonio clear underdog. Biggest key in that one for Memphis, stop DeRozan. I mean, DeRozan is pretty much, well, I was going to say their most dynamic offensive player, but they do have DeJounte Murray. They still have Pat Mills, who's still doing work. Even though it seems like he's been in the league like 20 years. I mean, he can still knock down an open three. Even a contested three, he can knock those down. There's no LaMarcus Aldridge there anymore. So, we'll see. Can Popovich pull off a miracle? Then, going up against Memphis. Memphis is a team. They're your typical young team that's still kind of forming an identity year after year. So they're still looked at as that young team on the come up. They have John Morant that everybody knows, dynamic young player. They have Dylan Brooks, who's most likely going to take on the toughest defensive assignment. So you'll probably see him on DeRozan. You have Jaren Jackson, who missed a lot of time this year, but finally came back late in the regular season. And now we're going to see, I guess, what the full complement of players from Memphis looks like with John Morant, Jaren Jackson, Dylan Brooks and all that. What can that team, make a little run, maybe win, I guess, against San Antonio and then knock off the loser of Lakers Warriors and get into the playoffs? Once again, with a young team like that, get into the playoffs to get experience. That experience can carry you several different ways. Or they struggle and maybe some pieces on the team get exposed as expendable and they move on from them. So, like I said, for Wednesday night, I guess the Lakers to beat the Warriors, and then Memphis to beat San Antonio to then set up a Warriors-Memphis game for the 8th seed. That's how I see it going. So as I said at the beginning of this episode, I like the play-in tournament. Hope it's here to stay. I don't think they really need to tweak it that much, but I've heard some people say that they should eliminate the 10th seed and leave it as 8 and 9 fighting for the 8th spot. I could live with that if they feel like, pushing out to the 10th seed is a little much and they don't want to risk having like a really mediocre team there. I guess. But I feel like there has to be some sort of end of this season mini tournament type thing to get the bottom of the playoff seeding. I think either way that has to be done, whether it's this current iteration or 8-9, kind of like the bubble way. I know some people have spoken out about it. Luka, I think, spoke out about it with Mark Cuban, I know, did with the Mavericks, who ultimately aren't in the play-in tournament, so who cares? I said earlier LeBron spoke out about it, which, gotta say, don't agree with him on this at all. I understand, well, not that I understand, but I know why LeBron said what he said. He's shown this pattern all throughout his career where he will like passively, aggressively, attack certain things about the NBA. So he probably said it hoping that Adam Silver or somebody in the commissioner's office ears will perk up, and then hoping that he'll force some change or they do away with it. I don't think that's happening. So sorry, LeBron. But it's something that we've seen in other sports. Baseball has it with their like 1 game wild card to get into the playoff, and it works wonderfully for baseball. So why can't it work for basketball? Doesn't legitimize anything like they try to say. After 72 games or 82 games, how could your playoff spot come down to a game or two? It's like, the current format, it's 7 and 8. For the most part, those teams get blown out by the 1 and 2 seeds. So what's the problem? Creating some excitement for the bottom of the playoffs. That's one thing. Second thing is, like I said, it brings some excitement to the end of the season. You know how many seasons before this where you'd get like an ESPN game in the last week of the season or something, and you had full starting lineups where you barely recognized anyone, and all the recognizable people were in street clothes? The NBA's trying to do it with that. Hopefully this makes that happen. So yeah, let's sum it all up. I'm a fan of the play-in tournament, even though my Celtics were in the play-in tournament and were at risk of missing the playoffs, which would have been infuriating, but either way, still like it. Yes, my Celtics did get the win, as I said before, against Washington, and they're in, but I still love the play-in tournament. And I think that pretty much covers it. So, I guess looking ahead, gonna talk this NHL probably on the next episode, because I have been watching the playoffs, and as I guess I think I teased this a couple episodes ago, but I'm gonna kind of let the people know. Well, I guess some of you listeners who probably don't pay attention to NHL at all, why you should be paying attention and watching the NHL playoffs. I'll go into that. Now that the Celtics are in the playoffs, I'll wait until we are kind of closer to the playoffs actually happening, because I do want to talk a little bit about my Celtics and I guess answer the question that a lot of Celtics fans have had this year. What's wrong with them? I'm going to go into that because I have some thoughts about that. I'll even, I guess, give my fellow Celtics fans a reason to, I guess, have some hope going forward. So I'll do that. And then I will do playoff predictions. I guess I will, run through how I think the playoff matchups will go, and I'll let you know who I think will meet in the Eastern Conference Finals as well as the Western Conference Finals, and who I ultimately see meeting up for the NBA Finals, and who I think will win it all this year. So I'll do that as well. But yeah, I think that's a good place to stop on this episode. And I feel like there's something else, but no, I think that's it. I guess for you guys listening, let me know what you think about the play-in tournament. And, easiest way to do that is wherever you are listening to this podcast. You could definitely drop a comment, after you listen to the episode and let me know. You could follow me on Twitter, at Chompin' Podcast. And then that way, we can interact that way. You let me know how you feel about the play-in tournament there. Or I do have a Facebook page for Chompin' at the Bit Podcast. You can go there, follow the page, and then you can leave your comment there. So let me know what you think about the play-in tournament. And also let me know, is your team in the playoffs and who your team is. Maybe I'll dedicate some time and let you know their outlook for the playoffs or something. We could do that. But yeah, thanks for listening. If you're new to the show, appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you liked it. You go back and check out some other episodes and, hit like, subscribe, or follow whatever the option is on your platform. Do that. That way, whenever I upload an episode, you'll be notified. So, thank you. Appreciate that. Like I said, getting close to that 100th episode. First milestone. Really excited for that one. And also, let somebody else know about the show. Really want to expand the audience and get going with the whole interaction and all that. So, would really appreciate it. So once again, thanks for tuning in. Be safe out there. God bless, of course. I'll catch you in the next episode. All right.